Hi everyone, Tammy here, Flannel Chick MTV. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is a interesting topic because I know that there are a lot of you out there who feel very differently than I do about it. And I want to talk with you today about to Strava or not to Strava, and how Strava actually killed my bike joy and why. Today's video, I was hoping to bring you along on a ride and chat, but it is incredibly windy out here today, and I'm not sure that any of my audio is going to be salvageable from the ride today. So I thought I'd tuck myself away inside the trees here and try to capture a little bit of audio and video and talk with you today about this idea of how Strava killed my bike joy. And the big question, to Strava or not to Strava? Now, I know there are some very serious Strava-ers out there, and I know for those of you who love Strava and use it all the time, this video is not for you. I am certainly not trying to persuade you not to Strava, and if Strava works for you and you enjoy using it as a tool, by all means, Strava away. But for those of you who maybe are like me and are a little bit ambivalent about using Strava, haven't used Strava yet, or unsure about Strava, or just don't like Strava, I'm talking to you maybe. Now, a few of you have reached out to me recently, either through Instagram or through the YouTube channel, and asked if you could follow me along on Strava. And I've told you, I'm not on Strava. I've chosen not to be on Strava. But there is a little bit of a backstory there, so maybe I'll share that with you today. Now, last season, I decided to upload Strava. And the reason for doing that is most of the people that I ride with use Strava, and they were all talking about it, and I was the only one pretty much not using it. So I thought, I wonder what I'm missing out on. And so when I remembered to turn Strava on, I started recording some of my rides. And there's some pretty interesting information that comes from Strava. I really liked some of the features, especially recording your route. That was probably my favorite feature, although you can do that on trail forks as well. Some of the things I initially didn't like about Strava is that I noticed that there seemed to be a reliability issue. So when I was riding with someone and we were riding side by side the exact same trail, sometimes we got different numbers at the end. So I always wondered about validity and reliability. But aside from that, Strava, was fun. It was a fun piece of information up until a certain point. And I'll tell you about the day that Strava killed my bike joy and why I decided not to use it anymore. I was riding a section of trail, a loop, a route that I'd ridden many times, a trail that I really love and that I'm comfortable with and that I've ridden a lot. And I was feeling really good on this particular ride. I was feeling strong and I was feeling fast. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, I'm really riding well today. I feel great on my bike today. This is a great ride. I think I'm progressing. I think I'm a lot faster than I was last season or earlier in the season. And I was feeling pretty stoked about myself on that ride that day. Until I looked at Strava. And I'll be honest with you, according to Strava, it was one of my worst rides of the season. And I don't mean it was my second best or my third best or I hadn't bested myself. I mean, based on my Strava, it was one of my worst rides on that route of the season. And I was so incredibly discouraged. I thought, firstly, how could I be so off in terms of my impression of myself on my bike? And secondly, I was feeling so good about my performance on the bike that day. And then to have this app tell me how badly I actually sucked on that ride was really disheartening. And it did kind of kill the bike joy that day. And I realized that instead of basing how I felt about my ride on the intrinsic experience and the intrinsic rewards I was getting from the ride, I turned it over to an extrinsic source. And in this case, that was Strava, the Strava app. So that extrinsic piece of data became what I was determining or using to determine how to feel about my ride on that day. And I thought, I'm not a professional rider. I ride for fun. I don't even ride to train. I'm not racing. I'm not competing. And so what is the benefit for me personally of using an app like this? And if there is a benefit, then maybe it outweighs the downside of every once in a while feeling worse about your ride than you did before Strava told you how to feel. And so I think this is an important thing to keep in mind, that tools like Strava can be incredible, particularly for people who are wanting to progress, who are wanting to train, and to use those tools as ways of monitoring and gauging progression and their training efforts. But it really shouldn't substitute or be a substitute for intrinsic evaluation of our riding and intrinsic reward. And so this idea of feeling really good and really strong in a ride and then feeling really disappointed about these external results based on Strava really made me second guess or think again about, why am I using Strava? What's this about? And if this is going to have this power over me, and I'm not a racer, I ride for fun, I'm not training for anything, I really don't need to know how I'm doing relative to my last ride. What is the advantage of using Strava for me personally? And so I'm just curious, for a lot of people, if Strava has caused you to think differently about your riding, and maybe in a negative way, or if it helps you feel good about your riding, because the opposite is also true. If you're getting personal bests on your rides, that feels pretty good when Strava tells you, yay, you had a great ride. But there is always a trade-off, because what about those rides where you don't outperform your last ride? Or what about those rides where, according to Strava, you suck today? How do you manage that and still maintain your bike joy, your love for the sport, and your enjoyment on the bike? How do you not let Strava determine how you feel about your rides? And so I realized that I didn't want to get into this habit of using an external source, an app like Strava, to determine how I felt about my performance on the bike. And so I decided to take it off my phone and to not use it anymore. However, I've since come to discover that some of the trail associations that I support and belong to can actually draw on some of the data from Strava in their funding applications, and that it benefits them to know about their ridership and how many people are riding certain trails. And so I'm reconsidering putting it back on my phone for that specific reason this summer. And if I can remember to turn it on, then maybe some of those trail associations that I support can benefit from that information. But I'm curious about you. Why do you use Strava? What do you love about Strava? And have there been any pitfalls for you with Strava? Are you aware that there is this tendency or possibility of exchanging intrinsic reward for extrinsic reward? That's what we call that in psychology. Kind of how you feel internally about yourself as a rider versus your external results, your external outcomes and performance. And has that been something that you've needed to be careful with as you've used Strava or similar apps? I would really love to hear from you. I'm curious if Strava has ever killed your bike joy. Please leave a comment below, hit the like button, and subscribe. And in the meantime, happy riding, everyone.